Yes, I'm John Brennan. I'm an organic farmer in Ireland, and I have managed a cooperative in Ireland since 2001. And this cooperative came together because we had many new organic producers, and the organic producers did not have any route to market. So I was involved in marketing in the IT sector, and I was also still farming. And one day, one of the guys in the co-op, the newly formed co-op, said, "We need a manager. Will you do it?" And I thought, well, I'm kind of bored at what I'm doing. So I said, yeah, I'll give it a go and see what happens. So I had to come in, I had to set up the infrastructure of offices. I also had to look for funding, and I had to set out a program for how the co-op would develop and what the co-op would do. Now, we are also in an area of Ireland which is also quite rural, and also it was kind of poor because the land is of poor quality, small scale farms, difficult soil and all of that. So the challenges were really big, but the main goal was that we could find outlets for organic produce. So my job was to develop markets, and I did that in different ways. I looked first of all at the produce we had locally, the meat, the beef, the vegetables and all of that. And then we set about setting up a farmers market locally. So we set up one of the first farmers markets in the country, and that's still going, and it's very successful. Then we also collaborated with larger processors, and we also work with them. We work to supply product for markets outside of Ireland, in the Netherlands and the UK. And those contracts are still in place today. We also then devised educational programs for our members, because at that time there was no place you could go for education on organic systems. So again, we found streams of funding which are now run year on year to allow organic producers to be trained in a whole range of things, from food safety to growing techniques to biological farming techniques to agroforestry, and it's all demand driven. It's driven by the farmers and producers themselves. So the cooperative now has spawned other initiatives, such as a training company. It has also spawned a training company in the health, in the hair and beauty sector. So I guess we have been a catalyst for many other activities and what you would call organizations that have sprung up in our area. So we also cultivate, we go to farmers because we are agricultural advisors, and so we help them to deal with all the bureaucracy, with all the EU programs, but we encourage them to look at things like ecotourism. Social farming has also developed in our region, mainly because of our influence. So social farming is where you take people with special needs, and whether it's maybe that they're maybe drug abusers, or that they may have some, they may be autistic, or they may have some other problems, and or they may be some form of mental illness that they're recovering from. And the farm is used as a holistic way of dealing with the traumas and the difficulties in their lives. So the farmer will take in maybe 1 or 2 people 2 or 3 days a week, and those people will work alongside the farmer, and the farmer, he gets a small amount of money for doing this, but the farmer gets great satisfaction from dealing with these people and seeing improvements in their well-being. So these are just some of the things that the co-op is involved in. I mean, we have at different stages been involved in work at European level in trying to formulate new policies, especially through the Common Agricultural Policy, to make it more reflective of our own ambitions. And so that's why I'm here again with ECBC, again as another way to at least get the agenda for both Ireland and for European small farmers onto the agenda, to make sure that we're not overlooked. I see small farmers as the threads that hold everything together, because they keep everything going in the countryside. They're the bedrock of the countryside. They provide the food. They provide the food for locals, but they also provide the food for visitors. They add to the biodiversity. They provide all sorts of public goods. And I think that needs to be recognised fully within the CAP. And what we need to see the positive contribution they're making environmentally. They're not the ones that are damaging the water systems. farming inappropriately. These are the custodians of the countryside. And so we have seen today, in fact, right here today, the numbers of dairy farmers that have the reduction of 50% in dairy farmers in many countries. We cannot really let that, continue to fall. We have to try and get to a stage where farmers are seen as a protected species, almost a little bit like rare breeds, that we say we've gone down to so many. If we let them fall further, they may disappear. And we have to also correlate that reduction in farming numbers with also the reductions in biodiversity that we see. In fact, we could say in some instances almost the collapse of biodiversity, because the mixed small farms that are the tradition right across Europe are because of those mixed species, the mixed type farming, there was interdependencies, not alone just between animals and plants, but also between insects, animals and plants. And so those things, once they're gone, they may be very, very difficult to re-establish. So I think that the small farming traditions of Europe should be enshrined in law, so that there's a legal definition and protection for those people, and that rather than see them as marginal and people to be, they're in the way of, and they are in the way of agribusiness, because agribusiness just wants to have 3 or 4 large farms and they just want to clear everything else off. So other things we do in Ireland is we've been involved in activism. You cannot be an organic farmer and not be an activist, because virtually everything you see around you is attacking your environment and the space in which you want to produce food. So we were involved in the anti-fracking campaign. There was a big plan to come in and start shale gas fracking, or gas shale fracking in the northwest of Ireland. Along with other community groups and activists, we came together and we did practical things. So we started to talk about, if you have fracking, you can't have farming. We then started to show the shale gas. We started to bring groups in onto farms and explain how the whole process worked. We educated ourselves, and so we could educate the public. And now we have another campaign to stop monoculture conifer plantations being planted everywhere, just like eucalyptus plantations in Portugal, because these plantations the land has been sold to outside interests, to pension funds. The small farmers are gone and they don't get an opportunity to purchase the land. And then we have, pension funds from Canada, Norway, owning this land. But also the type of forestry, it's acidic, it is bad for biodiversity, it's bad socially because it darkens off the countryside, and people who live close to them suffer from various psychological problems. So we're going to win, by the way. We win. We don't, and we will win this one as well, because we will keep going and keep attacking the Irish forestry policy and use all the European laws, and we will use the ARIS arrangements, which are really important. And people say, well, what good is Europe? But if we take the ARIS Convention on the ability to people to participate in issues that affect themselves, that unique piece of legislation has really empowered small local communities like ourselves. So Europe, I'm a committed European, despite all its flaws, and I take great hope when I come and meet similar people, fighting all the same and dealing with the same challenges here in Europe. And I think ECDC is a great way of channeling energy for a positive outcome for small